for our panel, Conversation with Eddie Izzard. Our interviewer today will be commentator, podcaster, Jamie Kilston.
Yay! Hey everybody! Are you guys having a good convention? It's Eddie! We're just doing it. It's happening.
Now we have one photograph to happen. This is great. I love the booming effect of the hall and not a huge amount of people here.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
There's one thing, it's great. One thing, you're never supposed to sell out, so we haven't sold out, and that's good, you know.
We're doing it.
But also,
it's happening.
I am standing to be a member of parliament after 2020. I want to do that, and as you'll know, I've been more and more active over the years. So you guys can say you were there when the seats weren't filled. So you're early adopters. You're the believers. You're the beautiful people. Anyway, your show.
No.
Is that your pen?
That is my pen. I have questions. I prepared.
Threw your pen on the floor.
I dressed lovely, as you did.
Yes, we did. It's like, I'm doing, this is my political outfit.
It's good. Guys, I just got here. Has every other panel almost had a fucking fist fight? Every time I go on Twitter, I'm like, time to check out Politicon, and it's like, Charlie Kirk storms audience. And I'm like, am I gonna die? So this will be nice. This will be like a reprieve. Okay, so.
Get that.
Phone. What if it's Charlie Kirk? You fucking talking shit? No, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, get that, will you?
You can get it, it's fine.
I can just keep saying that, wouldn't it? No, it got.
Okay, we're good. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is, I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about comedy and performing, but we were talking backstage this morning. Did you guys read the New York Times article about, I see someone already shaking their head like fake news, fuck that. There's a New York Times article that essentially said the Trump administration is going to go really hard on trans rights, and they're going to try to narrowly define gender by what you're born with biologically. And so people are obviously really scared about that they feel like the Trump administration is going to try to erase trans people.
Yeah, well, they can't do that because, you know, we're here, and so stuff him, you know. I came out 33 years ago, and so and in fact, the fight, of course, has been going on since the ancient Egyptians and before. This is not a thing. LGBT is genetic. I'm quite sure we're going to find the codes in there, because when I was 4 years old, I didn't start thinking, hey, I'm going to throw on a dress because it was a good move, politically or whatever, or a choice. It was just something I thought I would like to express myself that way. So whatever Trump does, whatever the administration does, if it's going to be tough for trans people, that is really horrible. I would say vote him out. Vote. There's an election you've got coming, your midterms, and then but these things are sent to try us, and these are obstacles that get in the way of humanity as we try and move forward to a place, well, this century, I keep saying this century, we've got to make it work for 7.5 billion people. That is the only future aim. The idea of Trump hate and Brexit, pulling things apart, separation, using hatred as a political weapon, which seems, unfortunately, to be very successful. There was a guy whose name began with H who used it back in the 30s. What was his name?
Hugh Laurie.
Yes, I think it was him. And he used hatred as this weapon. I mean, Mussolini was Hitler light, really, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Just said, I'll try a little bit of this. Hitler says, well, I'll turn it right up. And we fought them, and America came in. Thank you for coming into the war. A little bit late. You could have come earlier, but that was great. So we've had to fight the right-wing extremists before, and we have to fight them again. And so we'll just soldier on.
Yeah.
And the weird thing I was saying to you earlier is that if you look at it, if they've looked at this and they've said, we're going to attack trans people, the one weird thing is, why aren't they attacking gay and lesbian and bisexual people? And that's a good thing. They probably think we can't get in there. They're too well established.
Right.
And so there's actually a slightly inversely positive thing from that point of view.
We're like, they're going after the new kid.
Yeah, they're going after the new kid. They're going after the poor relation that's only just got to this place about 5 years ago. We say, hey, yes, we exist.
So for younger people, for younger trans people especially, is one of the reasons you're, I don't want to say less concerned, but is it because since you came out 30, 32 years ago. Have you seen this sort of, are you so used to this? Have you seen this kind of bullying?
I'm used to this. And imagine what's happening in various countries around the world. In Uganda, they were trying to murder people for being gay. So this thing happens, and depending on the leaders in different countries, there will be a few steps back. I mean, Hitler took things way back, and then we pushed it all back forwards again. Humanity does relentlessly move forwards.
Yeah.
Most people in this world are live and let live people. I've played 45 countries now. I'm performing in 4 languages, and I go around looking like this, and people most people go, okay,
Yeah.
And no matter what Trump tries to do on us, we will not go backwards. We will just keep going forward. So be tough, keep fighting. It is our Arthurian knight's quest to all trans people around the world. Just be stoic. Learn Krav Maga. That's quite a useful one.
Become a trans army.
Well, you just have to. I've fought people in the streets. When people abuse me in the streets, I abuse them back. And quite often we're just standing there going, what the fuck, you fucking out, I don't fucking out, well, you don't fucking out. And last guy who started abusing me, I reported him to the police in Britain. This is literally 6 months ago, 8 months ago. And they said, well, that's a hate crime. You better pay the statement. I said, well, that takes an hour. Yeah, there's an hour. And I thought, well, okay, I should do this. And they took him to court, and they got 2 counts against him. So, it's a difficult thing. It's tough. You've got to be brave. You have to be stoic, but we are the fighters. We have to be warriors. We have to be LGBT warriors, and you have to stand our ground and keep pushing forward. And they've tried to push back against humanity, but we are humanity. We're part of humanity, and we will just keep saying, let us be part of society. We're just trying to live and let live. And if Trump, hate is his only weapon he's got. Could you hate these people? Could you possibly hate those people, he says? Why not hate these people? I've got some new people for you to hate. Try these people. I'm thinking of hating these people.
It's like the saddest buffet.
Yeah. And then people will look at him in a history book in a number of years going, what was this guy doing? It's a wasted time. Anyway.
Well, what I love about the way you talk about it, and in your book you talk about it too, and we were even going over backstage where you were describing when you're in woman mode or in girl mode, you wear it like armor almost.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really important, where it's so easy for us nowadays to kind of complain on Twitter, and there's great Twitter activism, et cetera, but I think when you talk about seeing those challenges and taking the hate that you've gotten, and instead of feeling bad for yourself, fighting back, and then knowing that no one can fuck with you, no one can hurt you, because all of that hate you've gotten has just made you stronger.
Well, I would say it's not a perfect science. People can attack you. It can, and people have fought and they have died and whatever, but I will not go backwards. I will just stand my ground. If I have to fight, I will fight. And if that's what my mission is in life, is to stand my ground. But my main activism on being transgender is actually to do the other things I do.
Right.
Because when LGBT hits boring, then we've made it.
Right.
When people say, I'm gay, I'm doing it, great. Well, what do you do? Oh, I play the banjo. Are you any good at the banjo? Well, I'm quite good at the banjo. That's what I'm interested in.
Right.
I don't care if you're a bisexual person playing the banjo, or a trans person playing the banjo, or a gay person, or a straight person.
Right. Nobody should play the banjo.
This is not where I was going with this, but yeah, that is my point. That's what I've done in my activism, because I haven't marched down the streets and I haven't been like that. But what I thought I'd do is I'd create a space for myself where I'm saying, I'm doing this comedy, now doing this drama, and now running my marathons.
Right.
And in South Africa, I ran 27 marathons in 27 days with the nails painted. I kept the nails painted because I would have worn makeup, it would have come off my face. 27 marathons in South Africa, it's not going to stay on. But it was a bit of a message, and I think Nelson Mandela would have been with me. It wasn't his fight, but he would have said, no, that's cool, you go for that. And it was with the new South African flag and the nails. And, if a trans person can run 27 marathons in 27 days, I'd like to see a straight person do that.
Jesus.
I'd like to see Trump do that, or run one marathon.
Nobody wants to see Trump do that.
Yeah. Well, it's these people who sit in their seats and just hate as a 24/7 job. that's no way to live a life. Anyway, the point is I'm relentlessly positive and I will keep fighting forward, but it's not a perfect science. You do have to be ready for everything.
Yeah.
And I will fight the fight.
Do you have something you do either when you get attacked, or let's change the subject from trans rights entirely, because you talk about that a lot, you talk about your positive outlook, that are there days where you turn on the news and you're just like, we're all gonna fucking die? Like, how do you self-talk your way out of it? What helps you stay positive even when things seem so divided?
Well, I'm going into politics. I said to Newsweek in 2008, I was thinking of going into politics to test the water when I was in Louisville. I remember the time. I just thought, I'm going to throw this in to see what happens. And then in 2010, I said, no, I'm definitely going in 2020 because there was going to be an election set in that year. And now our elections are a movable feast. But the first general election after that, I will be standing to be an MP. And even if I don't get in first time, I'll go again, I'll go again, I'll go again, because I am kind of relentless. But I will bring all my energy to that, the energy that I am now performing in 4 languages and I'm running these marathons. I will bring all that in, and I'm a live and let live person, and I believe 95% of the world, 95% of 7.5 billion people are live and let live people, and it's just the extremists or the people that they want to hate. Sometimes they get control of a country, and they will just do that by saying, here's who you should hate. You've got new lists of people for you to hate.
Yeah.
And hatred, unfortunately, is this weird weapon in politics. People can drink on their own and they can hate on their own. You have to have one other person to love if you need to work together with someone else to do love. And it's less powerful than hatred in politics, which is an unfortunate thing for humanity. But I'm just positive because I have fought for so long and so hard, and I keep gradually edging forward. Sometimes it goes backwards, but it keeps going forward.
Yeah.
And I like people. I think most of us are great. I can talk to most people.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what's so interesting about this convention, too, is I'm sure everybody in here at some point has talked to someone that, whether they knew it or not, they politically disagreed with.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this tendency for Republicans to think that all Democrats are like, anarchists having abortions in the parking lot, which sounds great, and we think that all conservatives are just like Nazis. And a lot of times when you end up talking to people, you find out that they're not the caricature that you thought they were.
Yeah.
And they do lead with love, even if you disagree with their policies.
Well, that's true. And in the political world, and those are the people who are active, and what percentage of a voting population is that? It's quite a small amount of people. If you take activists, you take elected politicians, but then I think I've noticed that the vast majority of voting people will probably be emotional voters. They will vote emotionally. They won't sift through all the whys and the wherefores and the pros and the cons. They won't go through the endless list and look at the debates. They won't even watch the television on these things which are endlessly being gone through. They want to live their lives. They want to enjoy whatever money they've earned, to have holidays and stuff, and they will just get involved when it comes around to the election, and they will be swayed rather more emotionally, which when Barack Obama came through, that was a beautiful thing, and that was an emotional positive, and then it goes into an emotional negative with Trump.
Yeah. Why do you think we're attracted to extremes? Do you think it's just because the media gets more clicks and views by showing the extremes?
I think it comes with, it's easier, I think it's something to do with media and a sales point, and if it comes to an election, if you had 2 parties going to election, then they all agree on everything. That's not much of good for the media if they're trying to sell their newspapers. They want to make money, so they have bigger yachts. And so that's tricky. So it does tend to polarize out, but it all comes down to economics. Wars are fought because of economics, and politics polarizes heavily because of economics. If the 2008 subprime market caused by greedy people who were probably right-wing, then it goes into a right-wing situation where where a lot of working people are thinking, well, I'm going to not vote where I was voting. I'm going to be more attracted to more maybe extreme parties because they have this simplistic. Some people call them the populist politics, but they're the simplistic politics.
Right. Because a lot of right-wing people also got fucked over by the subprime mortgage crash, right? Like a lot of poor working-class white people also got.
But I would say that the subprime market, that crash, in Britain it took us into this thing where the money got very tight, and a lot of working people, they were just losing jobs, and there was less money invested into the public sector, and so it got very tight. And then we had this whole referendum, and the right-wing newspapers spun this to say that what happened in 2008, and they sort of linked that, the austerity that came out of that, that's all because of Europe. And so people started voting against that. And they were promised the earth, the idea that Brexit would be some wonderful heaven where everything was going to get so much easier. And we know now after 2 years that it's just a mess. No one has any idea of what's going to happen.
Right. All right, let's tone it down and talk about masturbation. When you... There we go. I was thinking about, so I read your book.
So we're still talking about politics then, Master?
Yeah, exactly. The fun kind. You guys should get this book. You should absolutely get it. I got a free copy, which is why I sadly got the large print version. But it's called Believe Me, A Memoir of Love, Death, and Jazz Chickens. Side note, I went back through to find the jazz chickens. It's not in there, right?
That's the joke. Jazz chickens are not mentioned in the book. But when they came up with the title, they said, you're supposed to be a funny guy. You've got to have something funny in the title. And they said, can we put it as Cake or Death? And I said, well, that's a very overused piece of my stand-up. That was about Church of England fundamentalists, which are kind of an oxymoron because they're so benign. Church of England is very benign.
Yeah.
In the old days, it used to be very heavy duty. So the idea that you're saying, would you like cake or death? That's your choice. And that was Cake or Death. But Jazz Chickens was all about just farmyard animals all make a noise and chickens go cock-a-doodle-doo unless a trumpet falls on their face.
Right.
And then they go... So I had these jazz chickens who were part of a band. And it was in a previous show, but it's not mentioned in the book.
Not mentioned once in the book. No. Yeah, okay. I thought I was...
I quite like that.
But you talk about, I mean, like, puberty for all of us was horrible, right? Like, I remember... I related to part of it where when I was like a 13-year-old boy, you would sit in your room, you would wait for like the car engine to turn, and once your mom left, you were just like, time to jerk off till she comes home and hopefully like not jerk off to death.
Is this you or me?
This is me.
I don't remember writing that.
I was 100% me. But in your book, it was so interesting where you were going through, I think you were starting to realize then that you were trans. At the same time, you were going through all these other like hormonal transitions where when your mom would leave, you were essentially in a rush.
It's my stepmother.
When your stepmother, sorry. When your stepmother would leave, you were in a rush to try on clothing, right?
Try on her clothing, yeah.
Yeah, like what were you thinking during
That's not every day, that's just on certain occasions.
on holidays and...
Yeah, well, basically, I knew when I was 4 that I wanted to express myself in that way. I didn't know how to articulate it. But my stepmother didn't turn up until I was 13.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't have fit her clothes before. But apparently I was trying on my mum's clothes when I was a kid. But, you know, it's something anyone's going to go through, especially at that time. So that would have been the 70s, late 70s. And it was, if you were trans, it was deemed as very wrong or other, or, you know, whatever. And I realized later on, once I got to university and I decided I was going to come out, that if I could take my natural boringness, I could use this to chat about this in an open way, and even not directly, even because in my stand-up I don't use it as a direct thing. I just use it as a sideways thing, and then it could people could say, oh, okay, so we could look at this in a different way because I'm just trying to express the same thing that some women, some younger women or younger girls wish to do. They wish to try and make up, they wish to do heels.
Right.
They wish to do that. Not all women do, but some women do. Some young women do and some older women do. And whatever they have that makes them want to do that, I have that same genetic code. I'm sure it's a code because it's exactly the same. I remember this thing. There was a mother who phoned into a program. It's one of those magazine programs. And she said, my daughter, she's 12, and she had my makeup on and my heels on. I told her, you get that stuff off your face. Yeah. How dare you 12-year-old girl. But when she was 16, she'd be like, and then when she's 20, it's going to be fun. It was the age that she was doing it.
Right.
And I just thought, well, that's exactly what I was trying to do at 12. And I thought, well, hang on, how could that entirely tie up? So this was it. I just articulated, I analyzed it in my head. I went to university, I tried to tell a doctor, I tried to get to see a psychiatrist, it didn't happen. So I self-analyzed and I decided that guilt and shame were not things that should be part of this, but I should try and use my energy to just try and express myself and try and knit myself into society so that I'm saying I'm here and doing the other things. That's important. LGBT people, any minority, you've got to truly try and succeed in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Be really good at what you're doing so that people go, God, what we really need is some LGBT people here because they can get this done.
Right.
It's those straight people who are crap at this. Those straight people, what can you do? And if anyone's worried about, LGBT, I always say, well, look at Hitler. He was straight, and he was a mass murderer.
It's a good point.
Murdering fuckhead. And so watch out for those straight people, because
nobody be the trans Hitler. Don't do it. You have a good track record right now.
Sexuality really makes no difference. We've got to get to that boring place, and we are getting boring. And Trump's trying to politicize it and be negative on it, and it doesn't matter. He'll pass. His term will pass, and we'll move on.
Change the subject. There was something that I heard you say in an interview that I really, really liked, where we originally met at this big atheist rally. It was called the Reason Rally, and it was you and Tim Minchin and Adam Savage, and it was in DC, right? And at that point, I was angry atheist, fuck God guy. And then I moved to LA, where I think legally now I have to be spiritual, and I felt really dumb because people still knew me as this sort of loud atheist, and I sort of stopped caring less about atheism, but I felt dumb. And then I heard you in an interview, I think you called yourself a spiritual atheist?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Because
I believe in us. I believe in us. I believe in humanity. I believe in the goodwill of men and women, of the 7.5 billion people. That's what I believe in. Because, I had I was trying to articulate the thing about the idea of a God. And I just noticed whenever there's a tsunami or there's an earthquake, there's someone there on the radio, on the television, they're going, we're here, it's terrible, it's a horrible situation. On the positive side, I must say to people back in the studio, we have Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders here, we've got the Red Cross, the Red Crescent are here, they're working together, we've got UNICEF, UNHCR, we've got lots of different men and women really trying to help their fellow human beings. And then the people back in the studio goes, right, thanks, Steve. Are there any gods there helping out? No gods helping at the moment. We're hoping for the Christian God. He might be turning up tomorrow. That'd be a Protestant or the Catholic God. We're not sure if he's swinging a handbag and it's on fire. He's probably Protestant. The Jewish God, he can't be. He's in Jerusalem because Donald Trump's done something stupid. The Islamic God's on holiday at the moment. He's on the moon. And the 2 million Hindu gods, they've got lost down the back of the sofa. So, and it says, can you show us a graph of all the time that gods have come down over the last 5,000 years of humanity and helped out human beings? It says, we got, the number of gods here, we got last 5,000 years, we put the figures in, and boom. So no gods have ever visited, ever come down, ever helped any human being at any point in the history, any world wars, any tsunamis. And if they don't come, if they're not going to help, then I'm not going to believe in them, And if they do come, I wouldn't vote for them. I wouldn't vote for God because World War II, why didn't he flick Hitler's head off? That was one point where it was very clear. You just got to flick Hitler's head off and it all would have stopped and 50 million people would have lived. So I believe in us. I believe in the goodwill of us. There's more goodwill than ill will. I hope that. I believe that. And so I'm spiritual with us. But I'm a non-theist. I don't believe in any floaty guy, any denomination. And if he comes down, I'm happy to eat my words. Say, here.
Yeah.
Now, what happened in the Second World War?
Where's the flick?
What was Hitler? Because Hitler's 2 siblings before that died in childbirth. You don't want any kid to die in childbirth except Hitler. You do want him you want Hitler's mother to go, whoa, his head's come off. Hitler's head's come off, baby Hitler. Oh, well, that'll save 50 million people. Wouldn't God have wanted that? Wouldn't Hitler have wanted that? But anyway, so I don't believe in a God because they don't believe in us. They never help us.
Yeah. Well, when you see, is that in a weird way why you want to? Because I think when most people think of politicians, they think of narcissists. They think of people who were on the left and the right, born into privilege, who are on a power trip and feel like they need to rule. Whereas when I hear you talk about politics, I think some people would almost call it naive, when in reality it is it is sort of based on love and bringing people together. And
Well, my views are kind of, could be naive.
no. Just what you were saying, what you were just saying now about, most of the time when politicians run, they're running against something.
Right.
Whereas it sounds like whenever I hear you talk, it's more what you just said. It's more how do we come together.
Well, no one else is doing that. No one can afford to do that, really. I think in politics, they probably look at hatred and say, come on, let's hate someone. And I do hate the haters, so I hate the right wing because they just start the hatred off, and so you have to push back on that. I hate the first haters, like I hate first aggression. But I do find people very interesting. I do like meeting them. I like talking to them. And I was born in Yemen. They're having a civil war going on there. I try like crazy to think what I can do. I try what I can do to help there. I want to learn Arabic. I'm going to learn Russian. I'm already speaking in French, German, and Spanish. I'm improvising because of Brexit and Trump hate. I'm going even stronger into that. I'm now improvising in French, improvising in German, in Berlin and Paris.
God, the people who hate immigrants are so fucking lazy.
Well, see. The astronaut said this. I feel I'm part of the Apollo generation. When I met Nelson Mandela, Neil Armstrong was walking out, if you can believe this. So Neil Armstrong was just over there, and then Nelson Mandela there. And I didn't talk to him. I should have said, Neil, how is he chatty? What's he done? Well done in '69, the landings, excellent. But the Apollo, all the astronauts, they looked down upon the Earth and they said, we see no borders. We see no borders. We've made borders. It's human beings have done this. Yeah. The tribalism, the separation, the other thing, that we're good and screw you, that nationalism, the saying us is good and you are bad, that's a political tool. The reality is most people are living that live in every country all around the world that live in that thing. And if we don't fight for this century, I just think this is going to be a tough century. And this could be the one where we make it work for 7.5 billion people or goodbye humanity. Those are the stakes. And I want to motivate very moderate people who sit back and think, I'm not going to get involved. I want them to get involved because this is it. The stakes are high. We invented dynamite in 1860, the hydrogen bomb in 1950. That was 90 years on exponential. If you think of the power of one stick of TNT to one hydrogen bomb, think of that power. That is exponential change. From hydrogen bomb to now is 70 years on, so it's almost the same time. Right. What the hell is out there now? This is the century. It's not going to be next century, next 80 years. We have artificial intelligence parity by 2050 that they're expecting. We have automation happening, coming on like a train. There's going to be a whole bunch of people who won't even be able to get jobs. Right. We're having to head towards a universal wage. This is going to be the century that if we're pulling apart and heading into tribal and our country's better than your country, that is not going to work. We need to be saying, I look at all the countries of the world. What can we learn from you? What can you learn from us? Reaching hands across borders. A lot of us are doing that, but that is much more complicated than hatred and pullback and separation. And that's why hatred and the extremists are having a sway at the moment, because there was the 2008 financial crisis. When the economics gets bad, the politics go to the extremes.
So what do you say to the moderates who are here in this audience, or when you're talking about politics or stumping or doing shows, what do you say to the moderates who, when they try to get involved, they turn on the news or they go on Twitter and they just see the extreme left and the extreme right? And
don't listen. If you were standing, when I was on stage, I don't listen to the endless noise. There's too much noise going on now. That was always out there, but people weren't sitting behind firewalls going, I hate you and I hate you and I hate you. Just don't listen to it. When I was a stand-up, I used to go on stage and people down the front who were quite belligerent, they would be shouting complete obscenities at you. Yeah. But you would just steamroll over them to get a show going, and then you'd get through to the majority of people who would be wanting to watch the show. And then when it goes to Twitter, you think one tweet that comes in that seems negative, you think, oh my God. So just don't, you've got to separate that out. I think this endless 24-hour tweet and news, I think, don't watch it.
Yeah.
I think get your own messages.
Fuck it.
But make connections. I'm saying moderate people, I'm a radical moderate. I do radical things with a moderate message. That's why I've run 43 marathons, 51 days, 27 marathons, 27 days, and raised money, and hopefully proved that something can be done. And other people say, well, I'm now running marathons, if you can do it, because I look quite ordinary. That's my lucky gift. Yeah. If you look extraordinary, like Olympian athletes, if they're Olympian rowers, then they go and run. You go, well, you were Olympian at that, so you're probably Olympian at that. If you're just an idiot like me, then they go, if you can run 27 marathons in 27 days, then I can do 1 or 2. Yeah. And I like that. I want to encourage people to go for their dreams. If you shoot for the stars, you can reach the moon. And that's an Apollo generation thing. We've
You
got
could have
to
told
think
that to Neil Armstrong.
Well, I know, but he already did.
Oh, that's right.
But he's not a chatty guy. But
No, it isn't too chatty.
but I was in Bishop Stortford, 7 years old, and I was watching him land on the moon. And it's a beautiful thing. And the fact that he took the controls in the last 30 seconds to a minute, and the fact that he landed with about 20 seconds worth of fuel left, and that the nerve that those guys had to do that. And the Russians as well. I salute the Russian cosmonauts and the American astronauts. All of those guys putting their lives on the line and going out there to push back the frontier.
Oh my God, I have to ask you, we were talking about this backstage. You literally told me, really nonchalantly by the way, that you've solved like the mystery of the universe, and you tell every interviewer that and no one has asked you about it.
No, it's in my book, my theory of the universe. Wait, do you want to hear this?
Yes!
Okay, here it is. This is my theory of the universe. And bear in mind that the Big Bang was 13.5 billion years ago, and we've had 5,000 years of civilization. So 13.5 billion years ago, long time, and then the ancient Egyptians, and then the Enlightenment was about 300 years ago. So if you look at the timeline of humanity, there's this big bit of rubbish there. What is this bit? If there was a God and with a plan, what is that bit?
Yeah.
What is that endless, endless bit? Because if God said, right, Big Bang, go now, boom.
Yep.
And then the helpers said, God, that was an excellent Big Bang. We love your Big Bang. Should we bring humanity in now? No, hang on a second. Civilization? No, just wait a bit. Is we waiting a week, 2 weeks? No, a bit longer. A year? I was thinking 13.5 billion years. And then we'll go in with the ancient Egyptians. Why not go straight to the Enlightenment? No, I want to go through some stuff with a lot of slavery and building of pointy buildings. What are you talking about, God? I'm on crack. No, that's the only explanation. So I don't believe in the gods, but this is my theory. So, thank you, 3 people, for being going with me.
I hope it wasn't people clapping.
500 years ago. We go 500 years
okay.
ago, right? We're here 500 years ago in Los Angeles. So what was going on there? Probably Native Americans running the gig. But you've got Steve and Janine and Jeff there. And I say to them, okay, you're here in the LA Convention Center. Right, just get your compass and go off in one direction, whichever direction you want. And if you go off in that direction for a long, long period of time, same direction, you're going to come back from the opposite direction and you'll end up at the same point. 500 years ago, whether it was here, anywhere in the world, they would have said, this is crazy. Doesn't make any sense. Now we know it's true. We live on a round ball, so whenever you go from one direction, you come back from the other direction, go from the other direction. And that's a beautiful idea, which means that LA is the center of the world.
They know that.
Well, but also New York is the center of the world, also London, Rio de Janeiro, Cape Town, wherever you are on the ball, anyone standing anywhere is always at the center of the surface of the earth. That's kind of a beautiful thing, which I noticed when I was walking through my mind one day. Now, take those ideas, jump up into outer space, and now I think the same thing happens, but in 3 dimensions. I think if you go in that direction in outer space for a long period of time, you're going to come back from this direction. If you go in that direction, you're going to come back from this direction. I think the whole of the universe wraps around on itself. Anywhere in the universe is the center of the universe, because everything is curved in the universe. All the moons are curved, all the planets are curved, all the suns are curved, all the galaxies are curved, all the trajectories are curved. And we know we can't have a brick wall in space, because what would be behind the brick wall? Is there a squirrel with a gun going, don't come in here? No, we haven't worked this out. You can't have an end bit. And I think it all wraps around in a way that we can't imagine. Like 500 years ago, we couldn't imagine the back of the world.
Right.
I mean, it's the back of the universe. It all just wraps around on itself. And then your Professor Hubble, the American astrologer, he built a huge telescope because he had one eye much bigger than the other. And he looked around and he said he saw the galaxies in the redshift, and he said everything is expanding. The universe, it was his take on this, the universe is expanding. I think maybe not. I think maybe when we hit the Big Bang, everything is now going around the back of the universe to come in for a big crunch, big bang, big crunch, big bang, big crunch, big bang, big crunch, big bang, big crunch. And it goes on and on like a heartbeat, and there's no beginning, no end, no God's controlling it. And it's just chance. I think the reason we have had 5,000 years of civilization, say from the ancient Egyptians, is just we were lucky enough to have the oxygen, to have us making it through the 5 huge extinctions that happened. I think it's just luck. And that's why we have good and evil, or positive and negative things in the world at the same time. We have a negative person like Donald Trump, positive like Gandhi, negative like Hitler, positive like Nelson Mandela, negative like dog poo, positive like a rainbow. And that's why it's up to us individuals, the goodwill of men and women around the world, to make this world a better world. That's the only thing that's going to happen. No one's going to help us from upstairs. It's up to us. That's why I'm a transgender person performing in 4 languages and running over 90 marathons. We do this, we can make the world a better place.
Oh my God. Everybody has a cup of ayahuasca under their chair. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I don't think we can, I certainly can't close better than that. So let's take questions from the audience, right? As you guys are making your way to the microphone, I should say a question is a question, not an angry flat earth screed. So just because we want to get to as many people as possible, if you could make it end with a question mark, that would be awesome.
Super, hi.
Hi.
Well, what do you think it will take for all of these different marginalized groups, be it Me Too, the LGBTQ, alphabet soup community, BLM, Black Lives Matter, all these groups to just come together to realize we're all fighting the same structure?
That is a very good question. I sometimes despair of us. The more open-minded and freedom of speech orientated that we get, the more sometimes we can fragment into different groups that almost seem to be fighting against each other. And we need to bear in mind that the Nazis got in because the communists didn't like the socialists, didn't like the social democrats, and they all sort of fought each other, and then you got the extreme right getting in because they have better message discipline. So I'm not sure what it is. I think things have to get that bad that everyone starts pulling together. I think that it's an unfortunate thing with humanity. But I haven't got an easy cure for that. So the answer to that question is I'm not sure what it is, and I have monitored that down through the centuries, and it's, or particularly in the last century, and it's, we have this tendency to form into different groups and disagree just slightly from each other and really get pissed off with the slight differences.
Yeah, we get more mad at people who we have more in common with than the enemy for some reason.
Well, this is weird. I'm getting into politics. I want to be an MP, but I think the easier fights are going to be against the people I totally disagree with, and the harder fights are going to be the people who are standing right next to me who slightly disagree with me on things. How you sort that out, I don't know. You try and be honorable, and you try and pull everyone in the direction. But it takes leadership, and it takes a fortitude, because a lot of people don't want to go into politics because I think they feel they're going to get beaten around so much. It's such a rough, tough place, and I don't know. I feel I have to go into politics because I'm built that way.
Yeah, well, I think it was your answer from before. That was an awesome question. I think it was what you were saying before about coming together, and if the person who asked that question can actually have a conversation with someone who they disagree with, and from a place of love instead of just screaming, then like that's step one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Hi, Eddie. My question's more about the Labour Party in general.
Yeah.
So when Jeremy was running against, for his re-election campaign, Momentum put in one of the policy platforms that he stands up to NATO and Trident. Would you be open to holding a referendum not to leave the EU, but to leave NATO because it basically provokes and causes war and famine and devastation all over the world?
No, for my personal vote, no. If you start saying we're going to have a referendum on this and a referendum on that and a referendum on the next thing and the third thing and the fourth thing, we're going to fragment all over the place. The one thing that I think there is will to have is to have a referendum on definitely a people's vote right now. But I'm not with that because my politics don't exactly agree with Jeremy's on this.
This is literally the only Q&A where you guys have been killing it with these short questions. And it's not like 9/11 faked the moon landing. You guys are incredible. Yes?
Hi, I have a question about atheism. I'm an atheist myself, but I see the narrative around that value system or belief is really negative right now in the public, and that I'm afraid to talk about my atheism with people for being judged and told that I believe in the devil. And how do we fix the narrative around atheism, because there are a lot of public figures?
Well, I think change the word. I think you're a non-theist, actually. You're not an atheist. You're a non-theist because you're non-God. You don't believe in the floaty guy. I just don't believe in the floaty guy. And if the floaty guy could possibly come down and stand up for himself or do something, but if I think it's 6 billion people in the world apparently believe in a floaty guy, and there's 1 billion of us say actually the floaty guy isn't coming. It's like a Santa Claus. Is Santa Claus coming to save us for the Second World War? And he doesn't come. Again, I'm a realistic idealist, so I cannot solve everything. But what I do is I will fight my fight. So if I'm not going to fight on the agenda on that. I hear what you're saying, but just keep going in the direction that you're going. I would change the word atheist because that's been demonized so much. If you're just saying, I believe in humanity. I am a believer. I just don't, that's really the way I want to say it. I don't believe in a God, I believe in us. I believe in humanity. So you're a believer, a true believer.
Thank you.
Hello, follow up on that. How do you get people to stop self-subjugating through their religious beliefs?
Had you been self-subjugating? How did you find that?
Well, where you might be in a marginalized class, but your religious beliefs help make you more, what's the word? I don't want to say sheepish.
Do you mean less willing to articulate your position?
Okay, so you agree with a certain political doctrine because they have the same religious, like they invoke religion as a, I'm having a hard time thinking.
You're saying, how do you stop yourself getting forced to do that because that's your religion?
Kind of fold into going along with policies that go against your self-interest, but you're going with their interest because of a shared belief.
I assume this isn't for you, right? Are you talking about like you have like a gay Christian sister or like something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
I think, well, from those point of view, honestly, I feel you have to unpick the religion. If you look at the history of religion, the guy, Jesus, that's the Greek version of his name. His name is Yeshua. Yeshua or Joshua, because I don't think the vowels were printed out back in Judea in those times. So his name was Yeshua or Joshua, and the Greeks called him Jesus in the translations. That guy was an interesting guy. He was a modernizer. He wanted to modernize the Jewish faith. And so was Muhammad. He was a modernizer. These guys were modernizers. So I would say to anyone who's in a religion, if they have to actually look at the history of it and what it really is, as opposed to what people's interpretation of it is. From that point of view, then you can pick and choose what you wish to believe in life. But if you're totally locked into the tram lines of religion, it really gets tricky because you're saying, well, I'm accepting the whole ball of wax, but then what, you could full orthodox or moderate or whatever. There's lots of different versions of each religion now. So the only way I found that anyone that I know has got to a place where they can completely be an open-minded thinker is by analyzing their religion and getting back to the root causes of the history of it. And in the history, there are great people who did great things. I think this Yeshua guy, who the Greeks called Jesus, is an amazing guy. He did beautiful things, and he was like a hippie. He was like a hippie back in the 30s. It was the 30s, it wasn't the 60s, it was the 30s. But, and it ended all badly, and then this guy Paul, who was called Saul, came over, and he proselytized, and it turned into this other thing. But the people who really stood up and said, let's modernize it and get back into humanity, those are the great people. And I think Muhammad is one, and I think Yeshua/Jesus is another.
Also, just show your family member they're loved, right? Like if they're not going to leave the group, like you can just do your part and just say you accept them, and then maybe one day they'll figure it out.
Thank you, 4 people.
We're slowly upgrading.
Hello, Eddie. First, I just want to say I love your rendition of For the Benefit of Mr. Kite. Across the Universe is a wonderful movie. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
But I want to ask a question about the future of the LGBTQ plus movement in current European politics. Okay. As it is in America and in many other places around the world, far-right extremism is on the rise. And I know that many far-right parties in Europe are even trying to appeal to LGBT individuals. I just want to ask what you think the future of the LGBT movement is going forward alongside the far-right, like the alt-right movement that exists in Europe.
Well, it seems that politics keeps cycling round, and the right-wing extremists sort of reinvent themselves as alt-right and whatever. But I would say that if you're LGBT plus, your political beliefs can be very different because you would assume everyone like that would be kind of center left, that kind of leaning, but there is no necessary, it's not necessarily the logic that does happen. I haven't analyzed the exact future of that. I know there will be pushback by right-wing extremists, and they will constantly do that. But we have come a long way since the ancient Egyptians. If you ever get pissed off with life, just look at human rights. Draw a little graph for yourself in your head from the ancient Egyptians to now. It's better than it was then. And we have gone back. You know, Hitler took it a long way back. And people, there's certain, you know, leaders have taken it back. Thatcher came up with anti-LGBT stuff. Right. And then we brought it back up. So we go forwards. We keep going forwards. And just stay tough, keep fighting, be positive, and try and be an expert in your job. But yeah, it's not great at the moment, but it's tough. And the beautiful thing about the European Union is we came together to stop world wars, and we have 26, 27 countries in there. It's very difficult to do. If you analyze the history of countries coming together, that's a very tough thing to do. It's much easier to pull apart, smashing things up, as Trump does with a hammer. Smash, 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 smash. Any child can do that. Bringing together is tough. That is the only way forward for humanity. So the right or the alt-right or the new fascists or whatever they're calling themselves, the new haters, they can come in and they do whatever they can. We just have to be ready for it and fight back on it. But I haven't got a perfect answer for it, except fight like crazy.
Thanks, that was a great question.
Hi, how are you guys?
Hey.
I have a serious question for you guys. I am an African American, and I want to know, how can you correlate LGBT civil rights with the civil rights movement for Black Americans back in 1866? Because if it wasn't for Black Americans fighting for civil rights, for our civil rights as Black Americans of the United States of America, that was enacted by Abraham Lincoln, the act was made specifically for Black Americans. So how can you correlate what the Black Americans fought for with the LGBT? Because back in 1866 and 1957, when the civil rights movement was occurring, there was no LGBT. So how can you correlate the two together?
Are you saying me personally? Because
I'm asking you the question. How can you correlate the civil rights for LGBT opposed to the African American civil rights here in the United States that were made specifically for Black Americans and our descendant children? There was no LGBT back in 1866 or 1957.
Can I answer that? Is that okay?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. When you say correlate, you're saying putting the two together and saying
yes,
exactly
how can you put the two together? Because there was no
LGBT
back in those times.
My answer is,
sorry.
I am not putting the two together.
Well, you guys are using our civil rights movement to protect your movement, so you guys are using our African American civil rights. Our ancestors fought for our rights, not LGBT rights. There is a difference. Our ancestors paved the way for us as African Americans here in this country and our descendant children to have civil rights and voting rights. It was not made for LGBT or people that migrated from foreign countries.
No, you don't have to boo. You don't have...
Well, hang on. Am I allowed to answer?
It's a disrespect to the African American race and all our ancestors that died for our children and our grandchildren. All of you that are disrespecting my ancestors,
you don't have to boo. You don't have
what they did for our.
No, well, hang on. If you're gonna make the statement over and over again, then no one can respond to you. I am not putting those two together. I am saying that any group that has to fight for its rights, it's important for them to fight for its rights. You are saying that I am doing this. I'm not. So I'm not saying that.
The whole LGBT community are using our civil rights.
No.
Our ancestors died for.
No.
My ancestors died for those rights. Abraham Lincoln enacted those rights in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. They are in the U.S. Constitution for Black Americans, not LGBT.
Hang on. Well, this.
So we can. No one here is doing that right now. You don't have to boo, right? And we understand what you're saying.
No one's disrespecting anyone.
But no one's
disrespecting anyone. But
no one here is doing that.
LGBT was marching in Selma, Alabama, or with Martin Luther King.
Look, hang on. You can't just. Okay, I think you've said your question now. We're going to have to go on to the next person. Otherwise, you're going to say the same thing over and over again. Yeah. Okay.
Civil rights are for black Americans only.
No, well that is not a fair line. Civil rights is only for black people, not for anyone else. That is not fair. You can't say civil rights is for everyone. Human rights. Okay, human rights. We're talking about human rights. No, we
Oh
can't
my God,
go.
she's going back to the mic.
I'm sorry, our ancestors fought and died for our civil rights here in this country.
Absolutely.
It's not
Absolutely.
fair for you guys to take it away from us.
But if you say that we're not allowed human rights, then that is not fair. That is not fair. All humans are allowed human rights. African American people went through absolute hell. It is absolutely true that the Civil War was fought, and in 1865 you thought everything would have been more positive, but it took 99 years until the civil rights laws went through with LBJ. But civil rights are important for every different community in the world, in the absolute, and they're human rights. And the idea that one is separate to the other, and if you're trying to say that no one else is allowed civil rights and no one else is allowed human rights, I do not agree with that.
Follow that with a question.
Hello.
Hi.
I just want to say the reason why I voted for Donald J. Trump, because he was for law and order, and he was for Americans first and America first. And Hillary Clinton talked about gays and lesbians. That was her message. Wait a second.
Stop yelling, everybody.
My goodness. Okay, and I respect anybody who is homosexual, whatever. For me, it's no one's business if anybody is gay or lesbian, homosexual. That is something to do behind closed doors. What is important? My question to you, sir, is just a second. Don't push me. Okay. Why is it that you personally talk so much about gays and lesbians when in America me personally, I voted for President Trump because he's for Americans and America first and for protecting our borders. Why is that so important to you? I'm talking about gays and lesbians the whole time. I've been here for almost an hour. That's all you talk about. So
Well, actually, I talked about theory of the universe as well in there.
Yeah, and flicking
I will talk about everything. I will talk about far-right extremism. I talk about the idea that if one country says we are better than something else, another country, that is nationalism, and that ends into tribalism and everyone's separating apart. What Donald Trump is doing is trying to pull apart the different countries of the world. We have spent decades, if not centuries, trying to learn to live together and work together in some shape or form. I am transgender, but I am for human beings. I don't think Donald Trump is for human beings.
He is for human beings. He's for everyone. That's the difference. He's for everyone.
I am for everyone.
But that's okay.
Donald Trump is not.
Hi, Eddie. So you were one of the first comedy specials that I watched with my dad, and I knew I was okay to come out to him because he was obviously okay with you. So I knew
great,
that.
thank you.
I am so glad to see your fucking face after all that.
My question is kind of in line with what's kind of been happening, but I've been out there, I've been talking with people and debating with people about, you can still be fired in 28 states for being LGBT. And people have said they face equally discrimination for being conservative. And I've also had people to come up and say I shouldn't even exist and I should end my life for being gay. How do you convince? Is it worth talking with people who have these sort of extreme views, or is it more about talking to the moderates as you?
I would say the emotional vote. I think there's some people who are locked into a certain viewpoint and they won't get out of it, and they are lost, I'm afraid, to humanity. There are a lot of emotional voters who will be anxious or less anxious, usually depending on the economics, and they have changed their minds over a number of years. I know it's also permissions of leaders that Donald Trump is giving people permission to behave in a more extreme way, in a more hateful way, I believe. And whereas Barack Obama gave people permission to behave in a more open-minded, more progressive way. So that's That's what tends to happen if you track the permissions of the leaders. And so there's a number of people in the middle who are gradually changing their viewpoints, but there are some people who will never change their viewpoints. So I wouldn't spend hours and hours trying to persuade someone who is just locked into a viewpoint.
Thank you.
I know you asked that question to Eddie, but just by the way you said everything, I just want to say that no matter what side of the political aisle any of you are, when you said like that they're telling you to end it or that you shouldn't exist, I would much rather a fucking army of people like you than people who are so self-conscious that they spend their lives judging what other people do. You can't leave. You can't go anywhere. We need people like you.
Thank you.
Hi, how's it going? I just
Okay,
want to say Trump's freaking awesome. He's done so much for this country, for minorities, everything. His African American and Hispanic unemployment rate is at an all-time low. He's bringing so much jobs back to America. Kanye West is fucking dope as well. No, why? What's your problem? What's the real problem with Trump? Tell me right now. What's the real problem with Trump?
What's your real problem?
The real problem with Trump.
He's using
Kanye's.
hate as a weapon. He's making America hate again. Let's make America hate again. That was his big statement.
Because he's speaking the truth. You talk about this.
That is not the truth.
In the world. He's meeting with
Hatred is not the truth. Smashing things up is not the truth.
You got to come together. Kim Jong-un. They said they denuclearize. You have to come together. Conversation is the answer. You can't cut people's free speech.
No, he's making people hate again.
Well, no, I agree you can't cut people's free speech. We're not doing it. That guy had a microphone.
Eddie, thank you so much. You were such a lifeline for me and my first girlfriend. We used to watch Hedwig and the Angry Inch and your comedy special, and thank you so much. I have a question because recently here in the United States, there was a law passed that was aimed at curbing sex trafficking, and what it's done in practice is only put those who are most vulnerable to sex trafficking, namely women, sex workers, and trans people, at greater risk. Now, I know in the UK, things are legal, not fully decriminalized as Amnesty International recommends as a way to curb sex trafficking. But how can we, do you support sex worker rights? And how can we work towards Amnesty International's recommendation of decriminalization worldwide as a way to stop sex trafficking?
I do believe in sex workers having rights. I'm not sure. What do you feel is the best way to vote? I don't have because when it comes to politics, you're passionate about a number of things, and there's so many things, but what do you think is the answer?
So as with other issues, LGBT and POC issues, we have to have sex workers at the table. We have to listen to people who have survived sex trafficking and are currently working in that system and are vulnerable to those forms of exploitation. We have to listen to them, and we have to decriminalize. That's what the World Health Organization says, and we hope that's what we all say.
Yes, the decriminalization, and Canada's doing it with cannabis, haven't they?
Yep, Canada did it last week with cannabis. Yeah, guys, can we end by all agreeing that weed should be legal? Republicans, Democrats, sex workers. Good call.
Hi there.
Last question.
Great job, Jamie. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Mr. Izzard, thank you so much for bringing a willingness to make politics more positive in the future. I look forward to you running in 2020.
Thank you.
I guess I was just interested in your thoughts on the two-party system that kind of dominates here and probably dominates where you are. Are you running as a third-party candidate or in the Labour candidate?
I'm a Labour Party candidate. It is interesting. Good question. I voted for changing augmenting the way that voting happens and bringing more proportional representation. That didn't pass in a referendum, so our country voted against it. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people in there weren't sure which way it should go. They don't pay that much attention. I do think it would have been a fairer thing in our country if we'd had more proportional representation. I think it probably would have worked against the party that I was in. But I'm pushing for fairness. I want things to be as fair as they can. But also most people do want direction. They do want they want direction. And there's the number of governments around the world that have the coalitions. It's much trickier to get a single direction in it. So this is democracy. This is problems of democracy. But proportional representation does seem to have more fairness in it, even if it gets more complicated.
Guys, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you to Eddie
Izzard. Wait. I want to wish all of you a happy Halloween. There's nothing scarier than a country that doesn't listen to you. A county that takes away your house, that takes away your freedom. Please, don't vote for people that are not Trump.
Eddie Izzard, everybody!